Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing the 1998 Disney movie Mulan, another absolute classic, part of the Disney Renaissance era. And to give you a little peek behind the podcast, I was actually originally going to discuss this movie back in episode 5. I even had the outro recorded for the end of episode 4, teasing the next week's episode. But then what happened was I looked at my calendar and I saw that October 3rd fell on a Wednesday that year, and I thought to myself, oh, I have to talk about Mean Girls. It's too iconic. It's too perfect. October 3rd. On Wednesdays, we wear pink, October 3rd is unofficially known as Mean Girls Day because on October 3rd, he asked me what day it was. It's October 3rd. So, anyway, here we are now 3 years later. I finally got around to discussing Mulan, one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, because Mulan herself is such an amazing character, and we see in the beginning of the movie how she doesn't fit in with the gender norms when she's taking notes to herself, reminding herself, okay, demure, quiet, all these things, punctual, and then, she's late for the matchmaker, all that stuff. How she doesn't fit in with those stereotypical feminine norms about knowing her place, about being just more of a prepared to be a subservient wife and all of that. Whereas then with her father being so solemn and worried about her when he's praying to their ancestors, saying, "Ancestors, please watch over Mulan." And then that juxtaposition of the chaos with the dog, little brother, running through, the doggy running through with a chicken feed, and then just the chickens all around him. And he's just like, please, it's already doomed from the start. And then when we meet Mulan's mother and her amazing grandmother, so she's so funny, the grandma. She's such a great character. When she just, it's like, let's see how you work with the cricket, seeing if it's good luck. And then she just covers her eyes, walks through the street, and I'm like, somehow is perfectly fine. It's like, yep, this cricket's a lucky one. And then Mulan shows up, and we have our first song of the movie, Honor to Us All. Such a great song. Obviously, the music is amazing. And, the whole thing with her not fitting in. So getting ready for the matchmaker, but we see how she just doesn't fit into these feminine norms. So seeing those gender roles in this movie, it really is an interesting theme and through line throughout the whole movie. And, just her kind of stumbling through, not with the other girls, and just with the umbrella and all that, all those things. And then, of course, Mulan is called first present, and then immediately speaking out of turn, all those things. And she's just looking at her notes on her arm, and then all the chaos with the cricket and the fire and all that stuff. And then when the woman says, "You may look like a bride, but you will never bring your family honor." And then poor Mulan is heartbroken and so devastating, obviously. I realize I'm recapping. I don't know. I didn't mean to already be recapping, but I don't know why I always feel that way specifically with Disney movies, because obviously that's what I do. I recap the movie and share my favorite moments, etc. But for some reason with Disney movies, I always feel it's so pointless for me to sit here and recap it when I know we've all seen them hundreds and hundreds of times throughout our childhood, throughout our lives, So whatever, I'll just keep on trucking along. So because it just feels like, oh, so then this happens, don't you remember that part? It's like, obviously you remember it, So I don't know why I feel that way specifically with Disney movies, but I do, and I always feel the need to point out how pointless it is. So anyway, pardon me as I went down that pointless tangent. So anyway, but that's what I love about these older Disney movies. Honestly, in general, there's a beauty to 2D animation that to me you simply cannot replicate with CG animation. Not to say that it's not beautiful too, and obviously it's still great storytelling too in terms of newer Disney movies, which there are obviously really great ones too. One of my favorites being Zootopia. But with these Disney movies, like this Renaissance era in particular, there's a reason they are absolutely timeless. There's a reason that you can't replicate it even with these live action remakes, which are for the most part so much more inferior to the original animated movies in every single way. The reason being is because they don't necessarily have the heart to them that the 2D animation has in terms of, I don't know, you just can't replicate it. That's it. There's just this beauty to it that simply isn't the same with live action. And speaking of the live action, I haven't seen the live action Mulan. I have no intention of ever seeing it because from what I've read about it and heard about it, it's inferior in every single way to the original. So what's the point? Really. So pardon me again with my pointless tangents. But hey, if you've listened to me for the past 3 years now, this is how I am. Sometimes I go on tangents, but it's still connected at least to the topic at hand, but whatever. This is what happens when I record late at night. I get a little, a little loopy. Anyway, pardon me. So, with Mulan, then, when she feels she's failed her family, and then we see like she's ashamed then when she walks back, and then the father smiles at her, and then she just turns away, covers her face with the horse. The horse is so cute too. His name is Khan, I think that's the horse's name. Then, of course, leading to the absolutely gorgeous, beautiful song Reflection, sung by Leah Salonga, who is also the singing voice for Jasmine, but, Jasmine from Aladdin, obviously, my all-time favorite Disney movie. And I also love the rendition by Christina Aguilera, the pop version of the song. And, a little fun fact about that is that is Christina Aguilera's very first single. Her second single was Genie in a Bottle, but her very first single was Reflection. So there you go. Little fun fact for you. And obviously that's such a beautiful song. Like, God, it's so beautiful. And obviously the visual is so powerful too. And I know it's become a joke over the years of, oh, she removes her makeup so quickly. Like, if you could just wipe away your makeup with just, like, your arm just like that, like, that's, really incredible. But obviously it's not about that. But that's just like a joke over the years with this movie. But, obviously the whole thing of, okay, this is her with this life of what they want her to be, and this is who she really is, and she just feels she's letting her family down. Oh, what an amazing, heartbreaking song, really. Such a powerful ballad. And then, obviously they find out that they're going to war, and it's so devastating with Mulan saying, like, you shouldn't go, you shouldn't have to go, you've already served in the war. And he says, I know my place, you must learn yours. So because he's doing it to protect his family. And she sees, though, that he's, like when he's practicing too and he stumbles because he's becoming weak, sadly, he's feeble, and she wants to protect him. And, obviously then the amazing moment when she decides she knows what she's going to do, she's going to take his place instead. And that whole beautiful montage of her resilient, it's just so powerful. Obviously the visuals, again, her chopping off her hair, her taking the official notice that he has been summoned for war, and then she leaves the little comb there. And then with the horse, it's like, we're gonna, like, the horse doesn't recognize her at first, and she's like, shh, it's okay. And then the cricket escapes too. Little Cricky runs out to go help her out. You kind of love the little cricket, he's so cute. And then, when they find out, and then the mom says, you have to go to her, she'll be killed. And then he says, if I reveal her, she will be. It's just like there's nothing they can do then. And then, of course, when we're introduced to Mushu, and, it's great too, because with this movie, it's Mulan trying to prove herself, and also Mushu trying to prove himself because he's been disgraced by the ancestors. So with him too, when he tries to awaken the great stone dragon, and then he's, like, shatters the whole thing. And then it's like, oh, are you awake? Yep, I'm awake now. I'm gonna go to Mulan. Of course, voiced by Eddie Murphy, too funny. But it's great how he's trying to prove himself so he can then be, like, reinstated as one of the gods with the ancestors. And it's just great too. It's like, I am the powerful Mushu. And I distinctly remember in the trailer with her saying, my ancestors sent a little lizard to help me. I distinctly remember that line in the trailers. And also, I honestly remember this as a kid, that I couldn't exactly put it into words, though, which I don't know, because again, sometimes when you watch stuff you haven't seen in a long time, and you remember things about it that you thought as a kid. So with this movie specifically, when we're introduced to Captain Li Shang, and then when he's talking to his father, the general, also with the counselor Chi Fu. So when Captain Li is introduced in this movie, first we see him as just, again, like, wanting to prove himself too to his father. And then, like, when his father leaves, it's like, oh, no, you'll do what's right, like, you'll be captain. He's like, oh, I won't let you down. Like, then when he leaves father, so, like, after that reveal. And then he shifts to then being this authoritative figure when they all like are fighting and everything, because Mulan trying to fit in just like ends up starting a fight with all of these dudes. And of course we meet like the other people, a part of the army, Yao Ling and Chen Po. But so when we're first introduced to Captain Li Shang, though, specifically, I remember as a kid thinking, I didn't know the words for it now, but now in hindsight, I know that I understood this. I know it sounds like very vague and odd, whatever the heck I'm talking about, but what I'm getting at is, as a kid, I recognized, oh, so we see him first in this vulnerable place, Li Shang, of wanting to prove himself to his dad. And so we see him in that role. And then it shifts to then him in the authoritative state of being the commanding officer and everything. And then immediately, like, who started this? And, like, you know, when he meets, it's like, I didn't ask for his name, I asked for yours. It's Ping, you know, that whole exchange. And I remember as a kid thinking, oh, so seeing him like this and then seeing him in this way, I'm still not fully describing it well, but I just remember recognizing that, like, in terms of just, oh, we're seeing him in just in a different way before we saw how he is throughout the movie of just as their commanding officer, as their captain, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I communicated that right, like articulated that properly, but I just remember as a kid recognizing that, oh, this is him essentially first with his father, him as a child essentially wanting to be like looking up to his dad and wanting to prove himself, and then immediately shifting to him being serious and him in control. That stood out to me in terms of, I guess, however you want to put it, a storytelling method, just a different way of, we didn't always see him at, like, we saw like kind of the personal side to him rather than immediately seeing him as just their chief, their leader, you know, things like that. So I just remember noticing that as a kid. Anyway, so, you know, the whole, of course, not just to jump to then the iconic song, I'll Make a Man Out of You. You know, it's such an amazing song. It's one of the best Disney songs, definitely. Reflection too, but you know, I'll Make a Man Out of You is, you know, the fight song. It's so good. And the montage. And obviously, throughout the course of the montage, we see Mulan failing, trying her best, but failing sadly. And we see Mushu trying to sneak and help her, but in a way it's like he's cheating. It's like he caught her a fish, he put the tomato already on the arrow, you know, like all those things. And then him being disappointed, Captain Li Shang. And then, like, you know, when he just picks up the thing for her, then it's like, you're not fit to be in the war, so pack up, go home, you're through. And then we see how they were all failing with climbing up to retrieve the arrow, and with the big heavy metal medallion, whatever those are, those medallion things around their wrists. This represents strength and this represents discipline. You will need both to retrieve the arrow. So then with Mulan, we see, instead of her seeing those two things as a detriment, she uses them to her advantage when she, like, instead of having them weigh her down, then she ties them around the pole and is able to climb up and retrieve the arrow, and then she's able to, you know, do everything, and he's impressed. So the classic training montage where then she improves. And it's just such powerful imagery and showing that she truly is capable. So it's just fantastic. And then, you know, like all the comedic stuff too, like the whole scene with them when she's in the lake trying to bathe, and then all the other guys show up, and then the whole thing with, yeah, with Mushu biting him. It's like, oh, snake, like Mushu. And then with Mulan, she's saying, I will never want to see a naked man again. And they all just run past, you know. As a kid, like anything with nudity for some reason as a kid is hilarious. Then with Mushu having the cricket write up that letter, I just hear him like a typewriter, like doing it with his feet with the ink. It's so cute. With that too, then it leads to the song A Girl Worth Fighting For. And this is something I necessarily didn't pick up on though, but I read about it years later, is that after this song, there's a tonal shift in the movie because they abruptly stop singing after they sing about the girl worth fighting for, all of them daydreaming about their perfect girl. Then, like, Mulan saying, how about a girl who's got a brain, who always speaks her mind? Nah, you know, that whole thing. But then when it abruptly stops, a girl worth fighting, and then they see, tragically, they've all been killed by the Hun army. And then also when Po finds the general's helmet and presents it to Captain Shang, and he just has a moment of devastation but a moment of reverence when he puts the sword there, he puts the helmet on top of it, and he bows, and just a moment of grief for his father, tragically, who's been killed. because after that part though, with the singing and all, so with that, what I was going to say was with the singing, with the A Girl Worth Fighting For, that it also becomes about not just them daydreaming about like their ideal wife, but also then because you have that imagery with the little doll, with a girl's doll, that it then becomes fighting for a young girl, fighting a girl worth fighting for, just the next generation of children. So that's a beautiful thematic thing that I didn't pick up on all these years until reading about it. And then I thought, oh, yeah, you're right. That's so true. So that's really interesting to me. And then obviously with Mulan being so intuitive and with her ingenuity too, when the Huns are attacking, and then she takes the thing, listen to me, whatever, to blast the avalanche instead. And then I didn't remember Mushu saying, oh, how could you have missed? He was right in front of you. So too funny. And Mulan, of course, ends up saving Captain Shang. And obviously, there's the hint of the little blossoming romance between them, like with Mushu earlier saying, oh, you like him. I like that. I forgot about that too. Not like I forgot that, but I forgot that specific line. I was like, oh, yeah, there's sort of a bit of a romance, but not really. I know there was also that whole thing about that he could be bi, technically, because he was like kind of crushing on her before he knew she is a woman, so whatever. So he's possibly bi, Captain Shang. But then obviously like when she saves him and then afterwards they find out he's wounded, and then obviously then her secret is revealed. And as a kid, obviously that I didn't pick up on that, like, oh, she's kind of exposing like her chest. Obviously it's bandaged up, but as a kid I don't you don't realize that really, and obviously because also it's a kids movie. But that's the thing too, this movie is so dark. Like, you see all of the bodies tragically, it is really dark too, with like they're at war, but that's what still, and again, like even with the gender norms too, so that they can hit on these heavier themes, but then it's still obviously very kid friendly with the comedic stuff with Mushu. So it's really well done. Then like when you think he's going to kill her, but then he just tosses the sword saying, a life for a life, my debt has been repaid. And then like poor Mulan, when she looks into the helmet and she says like, but I was wrong, I see nothing. And it's so tragic, because she thinks, maybe I didn't do this for my father, maybe I did this because I wanted to prove I can do something right. And then Mushu, when he says, the truth is, like, we're both frauds, your ancestors don't even like me, and all that. And then it's so funny, like when the cricket's crying, it's like, what, you're not actually lucky? And he says, and what are you, a sheep? As a kid, I can tell you that was like the funniest line to me. I distinctly remember that, like laughing hysterically at that. Like, what are you, a sheep? God. And another hilarious part I remember finding hilarious as a kid was when Mushu was like looking through, like as the avalanche is pouring down, he's like, Mulan, he just picks up the one guy screaming, he's like, nope, like, But anyway, then when Mulan sees the Huns and the leader, the main villain of the movie, what's his name again? Shan Yu, when they are in fact alive and they're going to try to kill them. That's the one thing I will say about this movie, that Shan Yu, though he's obviously an intimidating, like extremely intimidating antagonist and like a serious threat, that he's killed all these people and like it's devastating, he'll stop at nothing to kill them. So like with the danger of all that, he's a truly horrifying villain. That said, he's not a memorable character in terms of other iconic Disney villains. You look at, of course, Scar, Jafar, Gaston, Ursula, all these iconic Disney movie villains. Whereas with him, he's just like, there's nothing memorable about him in terms of anything funny, anything remotely comedic. He's just strictly intimidating with the whole thing. There's no memorable quotes with him. He doesn't have a song, so he's not necessarily a character, like a goofy character, like who's just like a comedic villain or something. Or, he's just like strictly a threat and that's it. Which again works for the tone of the movie with the more serious things. But in terms of the scope of iconic Disney movies and characters and things like that and villains, and he's just not that at all. So that's not necessarily criticism, that's just something I'm pointing out. But then Mulan, like, of course, she's like, well, I gotta do something. It's like, well, are we in this together or are we not, And then, like, Mushu saying, did you see those Huns? They popped up out of the snow like daisies, So then it's just great. Like, she's, of course, has to warn them. And then with Captain Shang, though, just kind of ignoring her, and she's saying, you trusted Ping, why is Mulan any different? And then it's great, obviously, too, with the gender reversals when they all reunite, and then it's like a reprise of I'll make a man out of you. I forgot about that, the reprise. I don't know how I forgot that, but I forgot about that, too. Even with how many times I've seen this movie, you know, certain things that for whatever reason don't always remember. But it's great too, because then like they're all dressed in drag, and you know, it's just because you're a woman doesn't mean you're not worth, you know, listening to. Like even when Mushu says, "Oh, what, you're a girl now, remember?" You know, so it's just like, ugh, gosh. But there you go. So then just when Captain Shang was about to present the sword, like his weapon, then the hawk flies in, or the crow, I don't even know what that is. And I forgot about the part too when like it turns, like when Mushu blows his fire and then it turns into like a roasted chicken, and like he's riding on the chicken. He's like, oh, so what's your plan? It's like, I'm just making this up as I go along, you know, all that stuff. So it's just obviously amazing then when she comes up with that plan with the, you know, just outsmarting Shan Yu, and then, you know, like, get off the roof, get off the roof, get off the roof. I love that too. I liked that as a kid. I don't know why. And the whole thing with the Emperor obviously is incredible. I've heard a great deal about you, Fa Mulan. You like stole your father's armor. You like all that stuff. Destroyed my palace, and you have saved us all. It's such a beautiful moment when he bows in respect and appreciation and deep admiration and deep reverence. And then, of course, the other guy looks over, Chi Fu, and he's just like, oh, and like scrambles down. And then that gorgeous, gorgeous moment where the entire crowd bows down to Mulan out of deep respect and appreciation. And then Mushu's so proud. It's like, look at my baby off saving China. Like, great. Oh, God. It's just so good. And then, like, when he presents her with those gifts, with the crest and with the sword. And then she hugs him. And then he's like, is she allowed to do that? You know, it's just so great. And then when she's, like, with Captain Shang again, he's like, oh, you fight good. Oh, thank you. And she leaves. Like, you know, and then when the Emperor says, you don't see a girl like that in every dynasty, he's like, you know, like, you idiot, go after her, you know. That's too funny too. It's so cute. And oh God, forget it, the moment when she reunites with, when her father's sitting there, and then the blossom has, like, the cherry blossoms have bloomed, and because earlier when he says how, oh look, this one hasn't blossomed yet, but when it does, it'll be the most beautiful. And so then, like, when it lands on him, it's just so beautiful. And then Mulan shows up, and then she's like, Father, I've come to you, like, with this, like, their gifts to, like, you know, with the crest and everything and the sword. And he just dumps them and hugs her. And he says, the greatest gift and honor is having you for a daughter. And that just gets me every time. I full on ugly cried this time. But, like, you know, it's like in a good way, though. Like, not in a sad way. Like, in a, like, oh, that's beautiful. Like, it's so touching and beautiful. That kind of way, because she always felt that she was a disgrace to him, whereas of course that's not the case. And it's just so beautiful, like, you know, like she always wanted to prove her worth in a way, prove her honor to her father, and it's so beautiful. And oh God, it just gets me. And then of course when Captain Shang shows up, it's like, oh, she should have brought back a man. And oh, sign me up for the war. And then when she says, oh, would you like to stay for dinner? Would you like to stay forever? I love that too. And I love also Mushu obviously getting his, like, reinstated, and he's like gets his glory back too. It's so good, you know. And then when she just gives him a little kiss, thanks Mushu, you know. So it's so cute. Oh God. And I haven't seen the sequel. I think they're gonna get married, as far as like Mulan and Captain Shang, and then I don't really know the plot of it, so I don't know. But I like that this one, it's not really about a romance. It's only very hinted at, like, but that's about it. You know, it's more so about Mulan proving her worth and coming into her own and showing that she's truly honorable. She's amazing. She's resilient. She is, like, saved all of China, you know. She's incredible. So obviously such an amazing movie, such an absolute classic. It's such a beautiful film, just truly so wonderful. And we must be swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon. And with that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Be sure to visit storytellingsaga.com for all places to listen and where to follow on social media. And as always, feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next episode episode, I am so excited to say that I will be interviewing Kevin Manthe, composer of many shows, movies, and video games. Most notably to me, he was the composer of Invader Zim, as well as Invader Zim Enter the Florpus. So I'm excited to chat with him, talk about those projects and other stuff he's worked on. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.